Hi, it's the Silly Moustache here again, and we've broken out my lovely mug saying I'd rather be playing guitar. Never mind. I owe thanks to Peter Hyde and also to Keith Skeltton for some questions that arrived on my YouTube channel or even my YouTube community, asking for details of all sorts of things. So I'm going to try and cover them quickly here because I have discussed them separately on previous YouTube videos, but I've done quite a lot of them. So let's start again. So Peter Hyde is asking for details of strings. Let's do strings first. Okay, here is my little book with a list of all my guitars and all the times I changed the strings, what I changed them to, when I've changed them, and any adjustments I made. Right, here is my little box of strings. This is a really useful box which is airtight, and I keep it with crystals to keep the humidity down as much as possible. Basically I use two gauges of strings. I use medium gauge and I use light gauge. The medium gauges are for my dreadnoughts and for my one jumbo design guitar. The rest, the triple O, the double O and the O and all those in between, I use light gauge. It's as simple as that. I prefer phosphor bronze strings, and my most used ones are D'addario and sometimes some Martins. So these are for my larger guitars, EJ17s and Martin MA550s. That's it. I'm a little bit skeptical about all the magical, fantastic new kinds of strings because it seems to me that they're the old-fashioned types of strings reintroduced. For light gauge, I tend to use D'addario or Martin MA540, and I'm just playing around with some Darko strings that I heard mention of on a certain acoustic guitar forum. They're cheap and cheerful and they're alright. I think they lack bass a little bit, but there we go. And for my Collins Triple O, I found that these Jim Dunlop ones that are DAP1254 light gauge are rather nice warm things. There are also things like John Pierce, but I have problems with their packing. So that's strings covered. Keith Skelton asked me my string changing frequency. Well, of course, everything has changed over the last year of COVID. But under normal circumstances, it will be 2 to 3 months. Now, I have very dry hands, and I don't tend to sweat a lot, so I don't have acid sweat type problems. So I don't need or like coated strings, and they seem to last pretty well, and I tend to change them when they start looking less bright rather than go dead. So there we go. So 2 to 3 months. I have left some strings on over this last period on guitars that effectively haven't been played for longer. There we go. And I would say I like nickel strings on my Mandolin and my Archtops. It just seems right. Right, what's the next thing? Finger picks. I don't use finger picks much. I do have them. They're nothing special, frankly. I used them on Dobro and on Wegen and a little bit on National, but nothing special. Pro pick, finger picks, any old thumb pick. Right, what's next? Changing frequency, yes. Keith asked about break-in time of guitar tops. This is infinitely variable, in my opinion. I have recently bought 2 Eastman guitars which have Adirondack tops on them. 2 very different Adirondack tops. I expect an Adirondack top to be very tight feeling out of the case and take maybe 10 years to open up maybe 25, depending on it. You know, if you play very gently, it's going to take longer. If you whack them, they're going to open up a bit more, but they've got to go through that process. The Adirondack tops on my 2 Eastman guitars were bright and beautiful and full right from day one. Sitka, I believe, opens up a little bit more quickly, and that's really the extent of my expertise on that. So, you know, this is personal opinion and not fact. My string changing frequency I've mentioned, but I'll just talk about my string changing equipment. Over there, out of sight and too heavy to pick up, is a large aluminium photographer's case that I've converted to keep all my bits and pieces, but the essential ones are an old D'addario headstock rest, or neck rest rather, that goes on here on this workshop, an old D'addario Planet Waves type thing. These have been modified now, a winder, and that's the essential bit, the clipper. A pair of pointy pliers for putting the bends in strings that I've discussed in previous videos, and this is my newest discovery, a music notepad pin puller, which is really the most useful version of this that I've seen for ages, so I was very glad to have that. Oh yes, and the other important thing is my electronic screwdriver, which is a Bosch IXO, which I'm not sure they make anymore, and a StewMac winder on the end. There we go. As far as keeping humidity under control, I have now gone over, after lots of things, onto these Music Nomad, and I'm making another video about these. This is their hydrometer that you can drop into the sound hole, and this is their humidifier, which has a nice big lump of sponge, which has been doing the job. It's very dry around here at the moment. Picks. After much reluctance, I was committed to blue chip picks. This is a TAD40 for my lighter stringed guitars. Light gauge strings, TAD40. Medium gauge strings, TAD50. As a second or a backup, I use Wegen TF120s and 140s, and frankly I can't tell the difference, but they're a perfectly good pick. Capos, Shubbs, standard basic Shubbs on everything. They work for me. Why spend more? Tuners. I've recently gone over to TC Electronics. I really like these. I think they're a little bit bulky. Not sure how I'm going to use these stuck on the headstock during performance. I don't think I will. I think I'll keep them in their little box and use them as necessary. So I'll just have to develop another system for that. For storing all my bits and pieces and knowing them when I go on stage, if I ever do again, I've got a tin like this, which is an old Princess Mary box, which are quite valuable in themselves. That's important. This has a value. So my blue chip picks, which have a value, go into another thing value. So this travels in the case with the guitar and everything I need, and so I take this out when I'm going to play and I put everything back, and I got a full audit. You can get cheaper versions of the Princess Mary thing that were issued in 2014, which serve much the same purpose. So there we are. I hope that's covered it as quickly as possible. Keith Skeltton also asked about saddle bridge pins. As far as saddles and nuts and things like that, bone. Why bother with anything else? As far as bridge pins concerned, all my Collings came with ebony pins, and I've exchanged them for bone pins. Why? Does it change the tone? Possibly, but they look nicer. That's it. I do have a couple of sets of, I think they're fossil walrus ivory or something like that. They do seem to make a slight extra as far as sustain, I think, and they look pretty. Well, they look like bad teeth, but they look pretty. How do I clean my fretboards? Well, I do clean my fretboards, and I use the same polish that I use on the rest of the guitar. It's something called that, and I think these people ought to be paying me because I promoted it so much. It's polish made, restorative polish made for all furniture, old, modern and antique. When I first bought it, it was sold to the trade only for cleaning antique furniture. So no cellulose, no nasty stuff. It's emulsion of some sort, and you put it on in very, very sparing amounts and you wipe it off with good quality cloths. And I do that on occasions on my fretboards, but never let any fluid seep into the gaps where your frets are inserted in the fretboard. So it's very, very minimal. Dampen, 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 wipe off. And that's as far as I would go. So that polish has worked very well for me for many years, and they ought to be sending me lots of free stuff. How a 500ml bottle lasts me for about 5 to 10 years. What else should I say? Maintenance tips. Your guitar is made of wood. Wood is organic. It will move. My guitars at the moment are a little bit buzzy around the 7th to 9th string because the humidity in here is around 35 to 37%, and that's too low. They're okay at 40. For me, they're ideal at 50%, and all through the winter it's been 50%. So stick them in a case with some of these. That's it. More details on this in another video. Maintenance, yes, I do adjust my truss rods occasionally, and it's usually seasonal. 1/8 of a turn one way or t'other. And yes, I do have a proper truss rod adjusting doodah. And I think I've just about covered it as quickly as possible. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful, and any more questions, please ask. I welcome them and I always try to answer them. So if you have been, thanks for watching. Bye.